Hey guys, this is Jonathan Lampel here with Blender HD, and in this tutorial I'm going to be covering how to fracture bricks. So if you've watched any of the previous videos, you've already seen how to fracture glass, wood, and concrete, and bricks is our last material. If I did miss one, or you have something else you want to know how to fracture, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll try to get to it. And so, this is a little bit redundant. There's a few extra things to watch out for with bricks. That is a bit different than concrete and wood and glass. So let's just jump right into it. I will skip over the things that we basically we've already covered in all of the other ones, so you probably don't really need to hear that again. However, I'll try to explain things as I go, and let's just jump right into it. Alright, so first, to make bricks, there's a couple of different ways to do it. You can do it with the array modifier or with particles, or lots of different ways. Right now I'm just going to do the array modifier. So now what I can do is I can just go into edit mode, scale along the Y to get the right width, scale along the Z, and there I have perfect brick. Now I can go into object mode and add an array modifier. With this I can increase this to say 6, move it over a little bit so it's kind of centered there, and we definitely don't want it flush with each other, well, with like their faces overlapping. That's definitely bad. So what we can do is change this to 1.01, and you can see it just gives us a little bit of a gap in between, and it is definitely what we want. If you set this too low, I think one time I tried 1.001 and it did not work because the cell fracture treated it as one object no matter what I did, and it would not separate the bricks. So be sure you do that. And I might set this actually a little bit higher, 1.05, just to give a little bit of, grout space. That's too high, 1.025. Good enough. Just be sure you don't set it too low, or else cell fracture is gonna kind of mess with it and you won't get good results. So you have to have a little bit of margin, but you don't need a ton. Alright, so now I'm going to add a second array modifier. And what I can do for this one is I can, instead of on the x-axis, I can array it, if I can say that, on the z-axis. And since this was 1.025, I'm going to double it on the z-axis to make it 2.05. There we go. So what that allows me to do is just take this, Shift D, duplicate it along the z-axis, position those right in between there. If you need to adjust it, you can just press G, Z, and then use Shift to kind of grab in small increments, and that looks good. It looks like we might need a little bit more space, so I'll just go let's see, 2.75. No, 1.75. I can count. Shoot, what the heck? What am I thinking? 1.075. 2.5. I'm sorry, I don't know where my math is going. I just did a bunch of homework and I am completely fried out and I can't even count. This is awful. Okay. I'll just leave it at 2.05. I honestly don't even know what happened there. I just completely spaced. That's pretty depressing when I can't multiply something by 2. I would make a really bad programmer. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these bricks that are being duplicated or arrayed along the z-axis and up the count. So I have a nice little wall there. Then I'm going to take both of these, press Ctrl J. Oops, I forgot to apply the modifiers. So first I'm going to go into each of these and apply the modifiers. And then I can select both of them, Ctrl J. And I can see we have all of these different bricks, each as their own separate piece, with a little bit of margin in between, which is perfect with what we want. Alright, so now I want kind of something to break through it. I think I've added a ball like all of the other videos, so I'll use a monkey this time, just for a little bit of variety. Parent it to the wall like before. Press Shift S, cursor to selected, excuse me. I really can't talk today. And there we go. We're all set to go. So with the wall selected, we can self-fracture, child vertices. Don't use own vertices, or else it's going to split these bricks in half, and it's going to look really bad. So only use child vertices. Set this, as high as you want, size your computer can handle, and obviously the higher you set this, the more fractures you're going to get. So it might look more realistic. Depends on what kind of quality. Right now I'm just going to go for like a preview type demonstration, but if you wanted to do this for like a movie or something, you definitely want to up that. Alright, since this is brick, I'm going to set this 0.5. Just remember from the other videos that the lower you set this, the more jagged kind of shards you're going to get. The higher you set this, the more it's going to apply the Voronoi pattern, making it more evenly spaced out. So noise and evenly spaced seem kind of opposites, but that's how it works. Alright, so recursion, I'll set that to 1, leave it at 0.25, and cursor close. And I'll set this to 500 because I don't want it to go too high, and I'm really not too worried about, remember in glass we had to set this all the way to 0, with wood we had to set that to 0 as well. But here I'm going to be having enough fractures that it doesn't really matter if, some are fractured and some aren't. So once it gets to 500 recursions, it'll just stop and we'll all be good. I will uncheck that since it's flat shaded. You need that checked when it's smooth shaded, but since it's flat shaded, we don't need that, and it'll reduce the poly count. Last thing is you definitely have to be sure you have that checked, or else it might merge some of these bricks together, which obviously in a brick wall is bad. So that's one of the big differences between brick and concrete, is you do for sure need this checked. Alright, lastly I'm going to add this to the group bricks, and you'll see how helpful this is in a couple minutes. And shatter. Okay. So here's our wall. That looks pretty nice. You can see here we have the small pieces in there, large pieces out here, and these bricks are remaining largely intact, which is really cool and definitely what we want. So that's pretty neat. And what we can do is just to make sure we don't have any duplicates. Sometimes when you're doing bricks and other objects, you will get some duplicates in here. Just go ahead and select them and delete them. Duplicates meaning it'll stretch like this entire length, or it'll be over the entire object, and it'll be really easy to spot if you just select a small portion of it and it selects the entire thing. You've got a problem, and then just delete it, and you should be set to go. Alright, so now I can make these a rigid body, and unlike last time, which I kept forgetting to add the groups in the self-fracture, now I did that, so I can go into group view, and you can see that I only have one group now, but that is bricks, and if I just select that, it's going to select all the bricks, which is really handy if I have lots of different objects. I can now select all of these at once, which is super cool. Alright, so now I can just go into the rigid body tools, add active, and you'll get that message. Remember, it doesn't really mean anything. Well, it definitely means something, but it's not an issue. So you can go ahead and play that back. And you can see here that we have a few of these objects, if you even can call them objects, that basically they're just vertices floating around, maybe they're edges, and that's why we're getting the message. But since you can't see them anyway, they serve zero purpose, so I can just go ahead and delete them, and we are all good. Okay, so with that all set, now I can add a ground plane, so I can press Shift, actually I'll go ahead and Shift S cursor to center first, center that on the ground, add a plane, go into edit mode, scale it up, extrude it down, and make sure it's not intersecting the wall, which it looks like it kind of is right now, so I can just move that down just a little bit there, and we should be good to go. Make that a passive rigid body like before, play it back just for kicks, and see that looks like a pretty good brick wall crumbling down. You see, on the outside where it's not being fractured, you have the large chunks of, square brick, and on the inside you have the, more Voronoi shattering type things, and it kind of naturally collapses in on itself. Alright, so now I think we want to throw the monkey at the wall. So I'm just going to press M, move that to the second layer, And just like before, maybe I'll add a little bit of rotation just for fun. CG artists have a really weird version of fun. Should definitely work on that. Okay, so I'm going to change this keyframing here to location rotation. And then when I press I, it'll automatically add a keyframe for location and rotation, and I don't have to go through that whole menu thing. So then here, I'm going to rotate it a bit. Oh, sorry, on frame 10. I'm going to move that to here. Rotate it a bit there. Rotate it a bit there. If you press RR, by the way, it goes into like a trackball rotation, which is really cool. So, just in case you need that. Then I can press I, insert a location keyframe there. Make that a active rigid body. On keyframe 10, I do want this to be, actually no, on keyframe 10, I don't want that to be animated. On frame 9, I do want that to be animated, so just like before. And you can see that there we have a nice little monkey hitting the wall. I'll set this to 5, which is really, really low, but I'll show you why it's so low in a minute. Okay, so one other problem that you can kind of see if we go into wireframe view is that, again, we have these objects going through the floor, and we don't want that, but if you remember a few of the last videos, we did fix this. It's really easy to fix, so I will save that for later. Alright, so now what we want to do is add the constraints. So to do that, instead of having to like select this, deselect that, what I can just do is I can just press bricks, which automatically selects it, make one of them the active object, and then down here under the bullet constraint tools, which remember is an add-on, so if you don't have it, go type in bullet constraint tools to Google, Bing, whatever. It'll pop up, you can download it and install it in the user preferences, and you'll be ready to go. Alright, so I'm just going to press X constraints, which might take a minute or two, and that was really, really fast. So if I play this back, you can see that they now kind of stick together. And I do mean kind of, because they don't look like they're sticking together all that well. So, let's just see what's going on. If I move this to a second collision group, it's not going to interact with that at all, so I can better see what's going on. You can see here that it's just already falling apart. It's kind of sticking together, but there's definitely lots of loose parts. And I found that sometimes this does happen. So if you go to select the rigid body constraints in the groups menu there, I can just remove these, select the bricks, add them again, because sometimes that happens and it's unfortunate, and you just need to trial and error, and hopefully it doesn't happen. So let me try that one more time. Okay, looks like it is still happening. This definitely has happened once or twice before, and the way I found to fix it is just, honestly, the only thing I could think of was just selecting all of these and adding them again. I could not think of a better way to do it. And, sometimes it fixed the issue, sometimes it didn't. Here it looks pretty bad. Because, we want them to stick together, and those obviously are not sticking at all. So let's play around with these settings here to see if we can fix the issue. You can see that it's not even adding the constraints over here, and they're just falling apart. All the constraints are kind of focused there. So maybe this is a bug in the bullet constraint tools themselves or something else. I don't know. I'll ask the developer, see what he thinks, because this does happen every once in a while. So let me just go ahead, select all those, make one of them the active object. Maybe if I do it manually, it'll work differently. You can see here it's still doing the exact same thing. So Okay, so let me just pause the mic, see if I can get this figured out, and I'll be back to you in just a second. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I did definitely forget something. Okay, so it was not a bug at all. What I just forgot to do is up the search radius, which you have to do before going in and adding the constraints. So if you see that some of these on the peripheral were not really sticking together, you can up the search radius, try not to make it too high. Maybe I'll even try 4. I think the default is 3. But then, what you can do is it now should work. So if you are having problems with objects, not sticking together, you can up the search radius a little bit higher, and then after they're all added, then you can go ahead and lower that and update selected, and it should work perfectly fine. Okay, so now you can see that everything is sticking together perfectly fine, and it looks great. Maybe not great yet, but we're getting there. Alright, so now if I move that back to the right collision group, you can see that they all kind of stick together, and it looks like it's bending. It looks like it's like a piece of cloth or something almost. It's not really breaking. And what we need to do here is a couple things. First of all, you have to override iterations, and make sure you have those selected, by the way. If I up this to 100 and update that, you can see as I play this back, it's a lot more solid. You don't get the, quite as many like wrinkles or whatever like you would normally. So that's definitely good. Another thing you can do is you can enable breakable, so that this will enable them to shatter. And if I set this to, say, 4, I'll set it to 5 at the moment, update selected, play the back, now it actually breaks, and that looks pretty cool. So, that looks pretty decent, but maybe I want it to break a little bit more, so I will try upping the mass to, say, 10. Maybe a bit more. I'll go 25. Okay, so now that is breaking through the brick wall quite nicely. So one thing that's kind of weird, I'll show it to you real quick. We covered this in the wood tutorial a little bit, but I just want to reiterate here because it's really important and easy to miss. Say I set this to something really high, like I set this to 500, take these constraints, and I set this to, say, 25. And I play this back. Maybe that wasn't the best example. Maybe this should be a little bit lower. 100. Okay. One problem that I've had sometimes is it looks like it's kind of stretching. Right now it doesn't really look like that. Right now it looks perfectly fine, actually. That looks great. But sometimes if I set these values too high, it looks like it's more tearing it than actually breaking it. So if you have that, one thing you can do is set this value a little bit lower and that value a little bit lower, and you'll get a better result. One thing that's kind of weird is that, if you set this higher and that higher, you'd think that it might be more realistic because, bricks are bonded together very tightly, and so, should have a higher breaking threshold, and you need a really heavy object to break it. So you might think that's the case, but what happened there? In actuality, it doesn't always work that way. So if you find it, kind of tearing or stretching really weird, then, go ahead and lower this and lower the mass, and it should work out great. Okay, so I'm going to lower this again, say 25. Maybe I'll keep this at 50. I don't know, just play around with it. A lot of, physics things have a lot of tweaking going on. It's really easy to set up, but, a lot of tweaking just for personal preference, and I don't even like that. I want smaller shards, so I'll set that back to like 10. Let's try that. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. So you can see that, where it's hitting, it has those nice little shards, and up here it has the actual, rectangular brick shapes, which is really, really cool and looks pretty nice. Okay, so last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to select these bricks here, make sure one of them's active, start deactivated, copy from active, so you can see that, beforehand it's not going to sag or anything. Looks great. Maybe I want these two attached to some sort of imaginary post, so I can just take those, unselect that, make sure that one's active, change this from active to passive, and then copy from active. And you can see that those are going to stay there while the rest of the wall kind of collapses. And then, these are going to be held in there a little bit, and it looks pretty good. Alright, so you can definitely play with these settings a lot. The big ones are the breaking threshold and the mass of this. You can also play with the mass of each individual brick if you'd like. What you can do, if you want to play with that, is just select the bricks, make sure one of them is active, go to calculate mass, and say I want brick common. Alright, so that changed each of these individually based on its size. So this will give you probably a lot bigger than what you had previously. And if I play this back, you can see that, the monkey doesn't really do a whole lot to it. But it does fall a little bit more realistically, which, obviously I like. So you can go ahead and now play with the monkey mass. So if I change that to, well, let's see what, I'll probably want to change this to like 300. Maybe even higher, but you see where I'm going. Just definitely play around with it, and yeah, I won't ramble on too long. I'm sure you get the point, and it looks pretty good. So sorry if this was a little bit repetitive of the other videos, but I just wanted to cover it because it's something that's really commonly being fractured. If you look on videos of like Rayfire or whatever, you'll see lots of brick fracturing, so I just wanted to cover it, make sure you know how it's done, go over a few of the things that are easy to get mixed up, and yeah, so thank you for watching. This ends the, part of that little mini series I had of fracturing. I'm thinking that we should have a, conclusion project or something. So if you have an idea, maybe like you want to know how to fracture a house or something like that, then, leave a comment in the comments below and I'll try to get to it. So if you have something that is, more applicable to your workflow, say, I know a lot of these, this is just like a little test video. It looks cool, but it's not going to help you in your actual job unless you know how to apply it to a real world situation. So just kind of try and think of a situation where you might want to use this in VFX or animation. Post it in the comments below and I'll see what I can do. So thank you for watching. If you liked the video, then feel free to give it a like. If you thought it was really boring and I did a bad job explaining, then, don't be afraid to dislike, because, constructive criticism is not a bad thing. I try to learn from it, and that's one of the big parts of being an artist. And lastly, if you want more tutorials, feel free to subscribe. So, thank you for watching, and have a great day. See you next time.